Happy Hanukkah and welcome to Yerushalmi Berachos Daf Lamed Zayin. We are in the Ozo Hadar print, and may the aura of Hanukkah help inspire a better understanding. We mentioned yesterday this idea in the Mishnah that we started off Nashim Avadim and Ketanim are pater from Kriya Shema and from Tefillin. And there's a whole problem about why specifically are the women pater from Tefillin. So I'll just make a quick note of this. I have 3 ha'aras for today. I'm not going to go into the exact details about the difference between the Bavli Yerushalmi in this, but I will make a quick note about the famous machlokas between the Rush and the Rambam about Sus Lila, whether it's pater from tzitzis. There's a lot of diukim in the Yerushalmi here. Ayin Sham, if you're doing it inside, you'll see that there's a difference between whether you hold the beged is mechuyev over time when the beged is being worn. Pajamas worn at night, pajamas worn at day, etc. Kia dua. Okay, so the Gemara says, how do I know that? The Gemara asks, Nasha minayin, how do I know they're pater from tefillin? Because it says, they're excluded. So the famous kasha on this is, if you hold that it's a mitzvah say shazman grama, which means that any mitzvah that's constant, like belief in Hashem, that's not a say shazman grama. There's no time that's causing it. Or any mitzvah lo say that you're not allowed to do something, even if it's at a specific time, like chametz on Pesach, etc. That women are chayiv in kuliyama. But the question is, but when it comes to mitzvah seish as man grama, for example, if you hold that tefillin, your putter at night, or your putter on Shabbos, then it has a specific time, even if it's a large time window, but still any time the women are putter. So therefore, if that's the case, then it's obvious that women are putter. So some Rishonim explain this Gemara, but it's saying that it holds that you're chayiv in tefillin all the time, and you're not putter on Shabbos, you're not putter on at night. Now that doesn't mean that they would hold that you wear it then, because maybe there are other exclusions, but it's a whole conversation. And other Rishonim say that it's just reinforcing what the Mishnah is explaining, like the Gemara sometimes asks, like, how do I know this thing? But anyway, that is an interesting ha'ara, just to keep in mind. For example, the Rush in Hilchos Tefillin says that our Gemara here is holding that it's not time-bound at all. And really women should wear tefillin, but now the pasuk excludes them. Again, there's a lot of interesting questions. I think we talked about this earlier, about, for example, according to Yerushalmi earlier, it said that you're pater on Shabbos because it's an os. We brought down there were 2, so 2 different reasons. But one of them was Gezeres HaKasav. The other one was because it's an os, and you need the os of bris or tefillin as two combined, or Shabbos and bris. But since you don't need 3, and you only need 2 edim, so therefore you're pater on Shabbos. We asked the famous kasha, but let's say somebody was a hemophiliac, and therefore he didn't get a bris because he was pater, or usher to get a bris because his brothers died. Would he have to put on tefillin on Shabbos? The Beis Yosef discusses this. Obviously, the answer is no. We all know that logically, but it's an interesting ha'ara. Anyway, not for now. So the next thing I want to talk about is a very interesting idea, which is children. When are they chayiv in mitzvahs tefillin? So there's a very famous machlokas between Rashi and Tosas whether the Mishnah that says that kids are pater, is that a child that's lo higia lechinuch, which is Tosas' pshat, or is it according to Rashi that higia lechinuch, he reached chinuch, but since he's not consistently by his father, so therefore he's pater. Now it's interesting, they both argue about how to read the Yerushalmi, but with all due respect to Tosas, Rashi's pshat seems to be the pashup pshat in the Yerushalmi, although he did mention that Tosefta does seem to be mashma like the Tosas. But anyway, so it says, L'man tiyeh Torah Hashem b'ficha, Torah should be in your mouth, and b'shashahu tader ba, it's only when you're consistent. Now let me just zoom out for a second. Meaning, normally for chinuch of a child, let's say a kid is higil chinuch of 6, 7, 8, 9, depending on their intelligence level, we're supposed to teach them how to learn Torah. We're supposed to teach them how to wear tzitzis. We're supposed to teach them all the different mitzvahs, even the mitzvahs say, like the Sefer HaChinuch says, Ani Yeshen of Alibi Er. There are, out of the 613 mitzvahs, many of them we can't unfortunately do nowadays, but Ayin Reish, or Reish Ayin really, 270 of them we actually could fulfill nowadays. Many of them have to do with karbanos, or specific to kahuna, etc., etc. And out of that, I believe there's 14 mitzvahs say that actually apply. I believe that's his number in the Sefer HaChinuch. But anyway, so the point is that most of them, there's a mitzvah of chinuch. So why is it that even nowadays we have a bar mitzvah boy, usually puts on tefillin, depending on your minhag, but usually about 1 month before the bar mitzvah. That's a very short amount of time. So we know Bali and many other people explain that the Indian is that he has to be able to protect himself, keep himself not to pass gas in them, and to keep his body clean, etc. So therefore, we push off wearing a tefillin until literally right at the age of bar mitzvah. We give him a month just to get used to it, because it takes about a month to get used to it. There's a halacha brought down on this farm that a Yasom, Rahman al-Litzlan, a boy whose father died, should put on tefillin a year early. And the Aruch HaShulchan brings this down. This was the minhag. Unfortunately, it was a lot more relevant during Europe. Of course, it's in the European times when people died, but a lot of people died younger, but nowadays, of course, it still happens for when it's long. And so the question is why? And he says that there's no source in halacha that explains it. So there's many different mafarshim that give different reasons, but I believe that some of it has to do with the Bavli and the Yerushalmi's reason, and I'll give you 3 reasons that just it should be for Torah, so we understand it better, not that it should be relevant to anyone. One of them is that the kid is not mature. Rahman al-Islam, this child lost his father, so therefore he has a certain more maturity that he's come to, and so he is more trustworthy. That he'll be able to protect his body better. And so therefore, because of that, this Yasom puts it on earlier. Another shot is because normally we put it on a month early to make sure he's doing the mitzvah right. So he shouldn't be a karkafta levanat film by the time he gets to 13 at the bar mitzvah age. Here, if his child or Chol Netzlan doesn't have a father, so he doesn't have anyone to be mechanech him in his life. So therefore, we make sure that we want him to put on the tefillin a year early to make sure that he gets the proper chinuch, because Nebuch, he doesn't have a father. And the last shot is that it's when a person does Torah mitzvahs in this world, it's the biggest sechus for his parents that taught him. And so therefore, maybe that this is an extra sechus for his father that passed away, that this son should put on tefillin. Anyway, that's just an interesting idea about what the Aruch HaShulchan calls no makar for that. The last Ara I want to share with you today, it's very interesting. That might surprise you, actually, because it's based on the Tosas and Berachos, Daf Yud Aleph, I believe. So it says like this. The Gemara says that why is it that Rav Yossi and Rav Acha were talking and learning, and they said, what's the difference between sukkah and lulav? That sukkah, you make one bracha, and if you don't leave it, you never make another one. Most of us leave, or we take our das off of it, even if you sleep in it. But lulav, you have to make a bracha every day. So the Gemara says sukkah applies day and night. Therefore, a person could stay there forever and only make one leisure b'sukkah, the whole sukkah. Obviously, that's not so relevant, but that's possible. But lulav is only something during the day, which is why the Ashkenazim, we say women are pater, but they're allowed to make a bracha on it and take it. And the Sfardim, they hold that they can't make a bracha on it. But anyway, either way, it's mitzvah seish hazman grama, just going back to our last conversation. So then Rav Yaakov said, wait a minute, but Talmud Torah applies Yom v'layla, yet we make a bracha, Berachos Torah, every morning. So what's going on? So it says, no. The Gemara answers, sukkah, it's possible never to interrupt because you could just sleep there. But Talmud Torah, it's impossible not to stop learning. And I think we both understand what that. I think we all understand what that means, but it actually doesn't exactly mean that. It means that basically it's interruptible, even like for example when you go to sleep in the sukkah. So therefore, you're still doing the mitzvah, but when you go to sleep, you're not doing the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky is definitely the king of Yerushalmi and also the king of the Yisba Yom V'Layla. So he explains that the mitzvah of Talmud Torah has in it an interruption intrinsically that could happen. Therefore, every morning there was instituted to do bracha. Now, you might ask, wait a minute. So if that's true, right, it's Tosas Yud Aleph on a base. It's a Maskal Shekavar. Tosas there asks that when a person goes to business, he gets up in the morning, daven shachar, learns a little bit, goes to business. When he comes home, he should make a Berachos Torah again because he forgot about learning. So it says, no, your mind was on it the whole time. So which one is it? Is your mind on it the whole time or not? So the answer is that really technically, even when you go to sleep, your mind could be on Torah, but Chazal, where it goes over it, since it's something that you interrupt and you go to sleep, therefore you have to make a Berachos Torah again every morning. It's Mechadish B'chol Yom Tu Ma'aseh Berachos. Maybe that's some of the remez to why we have to make the bracha of Berachos Torah again, in order to remind ourselves that we're always looking for a new, deeper understanding of Torah, which is really, really interesting. And another pshat that the Magen Avraham seems to say, to explain it a little bit more, is that it's like Berachos Shachar, that we make another bracha on it, even if you... It's something that just comes to the morning. Again, it should be part of our day. Torah should be part of our day. So this Yerushalmi is very interesting in how you tie it into that Tosas, and this idea that we don't take our mind off of Torah, but to a certain element, there is an element of going to sleep or interrupting, so a person does. That's what I was going to say. The last thing I was going to say is that the children of the Gra, in the introduction they wrote to Shulchan Aruch, they say that their father slept for 4 30-minute increments a day, less than 30 minutes. And the reason was because he held that Shisha Nishmin, the 60 breaths that a person's not allowed to sleep, otherwise they're Makabal Tumah, etc., and it's like they're dead. So that was 30 minutes. That's what he held the shir was. He always slept less than that, but he needed 4 segments of 2 hours. And they said that his mouth was moving the entire time he was talking and learning, and he got Sodas HaTorah while he was sleeping. So even the Vilna Gaon needed to sleep because he needed to learn, but even he would have to make a Berachos Torah in the morning. And the raya is that Rav Chaim Volozhin writes a story that I mentioned here a few times in the Hagdama to Tzafar Tznusa about when the Gra did not make Berachos Torah and therefore or was thinking during davening. He writes about these things as well, and he says that you have to make a Berachos Torah even to think and learning. Ayin Sham, and I hope this helped bring light into our lives with the beautiful words of the Yerushalmi and Divrei Chazal.